Roger, I'm very grateful to you over the last few months. Former chairman of the South East region, but a good counsellor to me. Thank you, Roger Bird.
Well, thank you very much, Rob. Thank you very much, and for all your work, obviously, in the campaign. I'm sorry to have missed a couple of the speeches this afternoon. I had another engagement I had to go to briefly, so I missed part of what Ray had said and what Janice and her colleagues were saying. Did any of them talk about horses at all? No? Any of them mention what happened yesterday at Epsom Downs in Surrey in the 220? Yes? A few people know. Well, there was a horse in the 220 at Epsom Downs called Farage. Spelled differently, so it may not be a direct descendant. And the horse won with odds of 16 to 1. If you're ever looking out for a good place to start your branch fundraising effort, find out where it's running next. Also, I was told just now outside by the local newsagent that there were a few people who turned up today without tickets in order to start a demonstration, because there'd been the wink had been tipped amongst the locals who were into that sort of thing to turn up and start a demonstration. And sure enough, 4 people did turn up. So, you know, they did their best. They haven't quite outnumbered us today, I'm glad to say. So it just goes to show we are still on march, very much. Now, I haven't talked much about myself up till now, because I see myself very much as the supporting act in all of this.
Roger, speak up, please.
Now, I recognise there the voice of John Moran, because he's the only person that can successfully heckle from the other side of a hall of 600 people. So, nice to see you, John. So, I don't tend to talk about myself much on these occasions, but I've spent the last 2 years as chief volunteer, as I like to describe it, in the South East. So, not directly running any of the branches, nobody's actual boss. I'm here to help candidates, to facilitate things, to help branches with problems, to help advise people like Rob Burberry. I've been involved in a lot of election campaigns over the years. I was adding it up the other day. So something over 70 different election campaigns of one kind or another in the course of more than 20 years. So I've seen a good few things and can provide a bit of advice with that. But I quite enjoy providing support to those of you who are in the front line as candidates. I've done that myself. I've been a local councillor. I've stood 3 times for UKIP in local elections as well, scoring 28% on 2 of those occasions. I didn't quite win, but there you go. But who am I? Why am I here exactly? Well, I'm one of those people that Nigel really hates because I'm an Oxford PPEist. I'm one of those terrible people who study philosophy, politics and economics, but I'm not one of those who thinks that purely as a result of that they can therefore run the country and tell everybody else what to think. I'm a bit more humble about my role in things. So I've served for 2 years as chairman of the South East region for UKIP. I've served as chairman of UKIP Surrey. I've been down at the grassroots, an activist, a canvasser, a deliverer, and everything else, as we all have. I've been a councillor in Wandsworth. I've been a trustee of a charity. I've worked for some years as finance director of a group of education companies in the private sector. I've been a university lecturer. I've trained as a chartered accountant and been an auditor. I've been company secretary of the PLC, and I've done brief stints years ago at the Bank of England, Conservative Central Office, insurance broking, and also at Car magazine. And my first ever job was singing on the West End stage. We often think that these days too many politicians have never had a proper job. At least you've got a wide selection there of ones that you can pick from as to what is a proper job and what isn't. So whatever it is. So what have I done as the South East Chairman? Hopefully, you will have seen me more behind the scenes helping with things, so that those of you who've been the candidates, whether at European level, Police and Crime Commission elections, whatever, can be at the front, leading the vanguard, and the people who are seen in the media most for UKIP. But I've been there behind the scenes. One of my contributions, which I can now talk about, is the process for the selection of European election candidates, which has clearly been very successful in terms of who we've managed to get elected. Well, the system that the NEC adopted 18 months ago is largely the system which I designed for them. And I hope that it worked well, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you didn't, it's my fault. So that's been one of my contributions. But sometimes I wonder if I stay too much in the background. I'll give you an example of that. Last year, at the conference, just like this one, the one we held in Frimley, when I was up here on the stage all day introducing the speakers, but I didn't actually give a speech myself. Well, we had a new member from London who came along to that conference, not from the South East region, but simply because she'd only recently joined UKIP, and that was the first event that was going on in the area, so she came along and dutifully made notes on everything that people had said, and who they were, what was going on, and impressions of it. She had no recollection of seeing me or anything I'd said or done the whole day, even though I'd been up there on the stage throughout introducing people. And even now that she's my girlfriend, I don't hold it against her. The lady in question, you may have seen more recently speaking out on UKIP's behalf, Suzanne Evans. Okay, I won my bet. I told her she'd get a bigger round of applause than me. So, yeah, there it is. Of course, she does outstanding work for us, and like me, she's a former councillor in London herself. She's much more front office, whereas I like to help people behind the scenes. I said to her recently, when it comes to presentation, she is the smile, I am the teeth. It's a fair description, I think, for those of you who know me well, anyway. So what has been achieved in that time? Well, obviously, in the last couple of years, we've been winning council seats in areas where we often hadn't expected to win council seats. Many of you here today, and I know some of you very well, have been successful in areas that the Conservatives in particular like to take for granted throughout the South East. And you know, voters never like being taken for granted. You know how when people canvass, Conservatives knocking on the door often say, "Hello, I'm calling from so-and-so. Can I count on your support?" Well, no, you can't. You can't count on anything. You have to persuade me. If we go and knock on people's doors, we say, "Hello, would you consider voting UKIP?" Or "I'm local. Can I interest you in UKIP?" But we don't take it as read that they're automatically going to support us. So we've been winning throughout the South East council seats by the dozen all across the area, and for me as a former councillor I think that's very important. As Nigel's already said, it's those clusters of councillors which are an essential building block for us in making sure we can now go on to win parliamentary seats all across the region as well. Now, he attributed this to Paddy Ashdown as a technique. I must say this is one area where I would disagree with him, because the technique is a bit older than that. Paddy Ashdown and his acolytes did use that successfully. But really, it's in the old-fashioned Liberal tradition. Some of you here will remember David Penhaligon from Cornwall, or Michael Meadowcroft from Leeds, or John Smithson, who's written on the subject. These are all Liberal Party activists, MPs or writers who have pioneered what they called community politics, and sometimes dismissed as pavement politics. But really, all politics is local, as the saying goes. You have to have those grassroots, those key building blocks, start with the local community and build upwards. If you just have a top-down party, as the Conservatives are now, as the SDP was when it was founded, or just a party of big interests, like the Labour Party has always been and has made no secret of, then you're not really in touch with what's going on. And that's another reason why I like a party like UKIP, because we are in touch with those grassroots and with those communities. Now, we're going to hear a lot and read a lot in the press about target seats for next year for Westminster. Well, it's not exactly news that there will be target seats. I don't know that we're actually going to be announcing such a list. In many ways, I think it's beneficial to try and keep the enemy guessing. It's not going to be for want of thinking or analysis. We do study these things in some detail. There are people here from all across the region, and I promise you that whatever constituency you live in, from any of the 84 in the southeast, I bet I know some of the principal population centres in your area, some of the councillors, what the boundary changes were, who your MP was, what the majority was, who was the previous MP and the one before that. All of these things and all the demographics, and all this goes into the mix. So whatever the selection is, it won't be random, and what's more, you'll all be very much involved in it, because when this campaign kicks off, we're going to need everybody doing whatever we all can. It's not only Westminster as well. We mustn't forget that if we look a year further out from there are the elections for the London Assembly in 2016 and for the devolved assemblies in Scotland and Wales, which have been pushed back to 2016, those elections. And it's important that we make progress there as well. Just as this year we proved that UKIP can win not just in London but in Scotland and Wales as well at European level, we want to make sure that we can prove that UKIP can win in all these areas, in the devolved assemblies as well, and prove that UKIP is the only truly national party that there is in Britain. As Nigel pointed out, the other parties don't need to target so much because they have their little pockets of support. The Conservatives, historically at least, have been strong here in our southeast region. Labour in the north and Scotland, etc., etc. So they haven't needed to target because they knew that whatever they did, they couldn't really appeal to the people who didn't vote for them already. Well, we have no such glass ceiling on our vote. We've proved this year that we can win in all sorts of areas where people didn't think we could. And we're going to confound expectations again next year. And we're going to keep on confounding expectations for as long as the political class and the media keep underestimating us. You see, they don't believe that we can do this. They don't believe that we're here to stay, but they just don't think that we have the critical mass to take on those deep vested interests on our own, unaided. You see, the Labour Party, when they were formed, and they started winning parliamentary seats at the beginning of the 20th century, people often forget now, the Labour Party in those years had pacts with the Liberal Party. They wouldn't have won those seats if they did not have those pacts. So people like to assume, just as with the SDP and the Liberal Party in the 80s, oh, well, UKIP must have a pact, and it must be with the Conservatives. Well, no. We don't need them. We don't need a pact to win, we've already proved that, and there's more. We want to make sure that there's a UKIP name on every ballot paper that the voters can pick, because if we're not there, they'll notice that we're absent. It's not our job to help the Conservative Party to win elections. If they can't do it on their own, we're not going to help them. Now, things are a little more complicated than that, because of course, when it comes to what we do once we've been elected, as people are finding out now in councils, sometimes negotiations make strange bedfellows, and at council level, if we want to stop a road scheme or a planning development, or try and stop cuts in social services, as Chris Wood was saying, well, sometimes we need support from the other parties as well. If we don't have a majority on a council, then we need politicians of other parties to vote for some of the proposals we're putting forward. It's only natural to try to build those sorts of alliances to get the things we need. And that's as true of getting a referendum to leave the EU as it is for anything else. So that's another matter. But electoral pacts is just a way of cheating the electorate. And that's never been UKIP's way. I've spent a lot of my time in the last 2 years trying to encourage people to stand as candidate, not to dissuade them and try to stand down in favour of somebody else who's never subscribed to UKIP's views or UKIP's policy or UKIP as a party. And I hope that the future will hold much the same for us. But what can we do in detail? What does the path to Westminster actually involve? Well, in a moment we're going to be hearing more about what can be done at detailed level, out in the branches and out at county level. But just a few pointers for you as someone who's fought a lot of elections and who's helped other people to fight a lot of elections. Well, as Jason was saying just now, plan early. It isn't just about building the frames for the boards which are going up. Plan early in all sorts of ways. Start by selecting your candidates early, not just parliamentary ones, but those of you with council elections as well. Get your council candidates all in place as well. And when you do that, very important, make sure you check them. Because I promise you this, if we don't check them, somebody else that we don't like so much will check them for us, and we'll read all about it on in the press, on the news, etc. So, without having to be suspicious of people who've been in your branch, perhaps with neighbours and friends, at any rate, do just check that there isn't more to them than meets the eye. Just check the people you think you know really are all they seem, and then hopefully we can have the best possible slates of UKIP candidates, and then that way they'll be the best councillors when they do get elected. So that's the first thing. Plan now and do these things early. It's no good if we leave this till a month or two before the election or days before nominations close, because then we're doing things in a panic. A favourite example of mine, which I like to quote, is about postal vote letters. Now, as we all know, postal voters turn out to vote in roughly twice the proportion as non-postal voters. So in a council election, about 2/3 of postal voters will vote, but only about 1/3 of other people. So, given that in most wards, postal voters will average perhaps 20% of the electorate, it could be anything from 10 to 30, but roughly 20% on average, you've got a small segment there of the electorate who you know is politically switched on. They follow these things, or they're interested in their community. At any rate, they interface to some degree with politicians and their message. And those are the people that we need to concentrate on speaking to particularly, as well as everyone else. So what can we do? Well, one thing we can do is we can write to them. Well, many of you are thinking, well, we do that, of course, we write to them during the campaign. Okay, but putting together postal vote letters takes time. The way I do them, I mail merge them, so the computer churns out printed postal vote letters, each individually addressed off the electoral register, and I sign individually every single one. Last year in the county council election, that means I signed 1,800 postal vote letters and folded them myself and put them in the envelopes, the window envelopes. And fortunately, I had a very good team of people in Leatherhead and throughout Mill Valley who helped me deliver those to their recipients. Otherwise, I would have been a bit of a struggle. But you see, the point is, you can do all of this well before the election. You don't have to wait until you're about to send the letters out. 3 months before the election, you know who your council candidate will be in that ward. You know who the postal voters are. You know what your message is. You know what you want to say to them. What's stopping you from getting the envelopes 3 months before nominations and putting them all together then? You don't have to deliver them until the election is actually going on and get the message out just when they're getting their ballot papers. But this is one of the obvious preparation techniques, things you can do early. And I promise you, it will save you a huge amount of time in the campaign when you'd rather be doing anything else, such as knocking on doors, and that's the way to do it. Now, many of you are familiar with the benefits of canvassing as opposed to any other campaign technique. Politics is, after all about people, and if we're not interested in people, we shouldn't really be trying to represent them, should we? So, let's try and meet as many of them as possible. Certainly in council elections, and to a lesser extent in a whole parliamentary constituency, we're winning votes at retail, not wholesale level. We're meeting people one by one, or two by two, family by family. And we want to make sure that they have a chance to meet the candidate, above all for council seats, and that we're recording what they tell us, not just which party they'll vote for, but also what issues are important, because then, subsequently, whether we win the election or not, we can then get in touch with them again and say, well, that bus route you asked us about, this is the answer. Or that problem about the garages on the housing estate, we found out this, etc. You can help people with things. I used to keep a file of all the thank you letters I got from people I'd helped when I was a councillor. And some of them are really touching, because it's lovely to feel that you can make a difference to people's lives. And that's what it's all about. And if you enjoy those things, then you'll have a whale of a time as a councillor, I can assure you, and hopefully as a member of Parliament as well, for those of you who are standing. And I wish you every success with it. Now, today is also, was also scheduled as a handover of power, where I would pass on the torch to the next South East chairman. Now, for technical reasons, the next South East chairman won't be selected until next month, when the South East Committee will be meeting to pick somebody. So I'm not able to do that for you today. But it's interesting to compare how we do these things in UKIP, by the book and by process, compared with a similar selection process which is going on to decide who's going to be the next President of the European Commission. And clearly, Mr. Juncker thinks that he's got it all stitched up. And we were hearing earlier that maybe some of the other candidates think they've all got it stitched up for them. And it just isn't really, well, it's not really democracy, is it? It's not really cricket. It's not the way we want to do things. So we don't. At least, I think, if they're going to do things that way, behind closed doors and secretly, it's really an affront to democracy. It's an affront to the people that they pretend to represent. And it reminds me rather of the famous line attributed to Catherine the Great, who at least was a bit more open about dictatorship and things. And she said, supposedly at the start of her reign in the 1760s, "I shall be an autocrat, that's my trade, and the good Lord will forgive me, that's his." So I've tried to be as far from that mantra as possible over the last couple of years, and I'm sure things will continue in that vein.